What if the person you trusted with your children, your prayers, and your sense of safety was hiding something unimaginable? What if the face that smiled at church, shook hands at community events, and followed every rule was also responsible for terror that lasted decades? Tonight's story isn't just about a criminal. It's about how trust can become a perfect disguise, and how the most ordinary-seeming person can sometimes be the one no one ever suspects. This is the story of a man who blended in so well that even the people closest to him never questioned a thing, until the truth finally surfaced. For more than 30 years, one name haunted the city of Wichita, Kansas: BTK. It stood for bind, torture, kill. A chilling signature left by a serial killer who taunted police, newspapers, and the public with letters describing his crimes in disturbing detail. He was methodical, patient, and cruel. And for decades, no one could find him. What made the mystery even more unsettling was this simple fact. While the city was searching for a monster, the monster was living a life that looked almost perfectly normal. Dennis Lynn Rader was born in 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and raised in Wichita. By all outward appearances, his early life was unremarkable. He was one of 4 brothers in a working-class family. His parents worked long hours, and like many children of that era, he learned early how to entertain himself. Later in life, Rader would describe feeling neglected and fantasizing about control and violence from a young age. But nothing about his childhood set off obvious alarms. There were no dramatic interventions, no institutionalizations, no paper trail that screamed danger. As an adult, Dennis Rader built the kind of resume that inspires trust. He served in the U.S. Air Force. He married, had 2 children, and settled into suburban life. He worked as a compliance officer for the city of Park City, Kansas, enforcing codes related to animal control, zoning, and property maintenance. In his neighborhood, he was known as strict, sometimes overly so, but also as someone who followed rules to the letter. Ironically, his job required him to issue warnings and citations for minor violations. He was the person knocking on doors to make sure others stayed in line. Even more striking was his role in the church. Rader was an active member of Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita, where he served as president of the congregation. He participated in church activities, attended services regularly, and was trusted by fellow parishioners. He was also a Cub Scout leader, someone parents felt comfortable leaving their children with. In every visible way, Dennis Rader embodied reliability, discipline, and moral order. All the while, the city of Wichita was living in fear. The BTK killings began in 1974 with the brutal murder of the Otero family. Joseph and Julie Otero and 2 of their children were found bound and strangled in their home. The crime shocked the community, not just for its violence, but for its apparent lack of motive. There was no robbery, no personal connection that investigators could immediately identify. It felt random, and that randomness made it terrifying. Over the next several years, more murders followed. Victims were stalked, bound, tortured, and killed, often in their own homes. The killer took trophies, photographed his crimes, and relived them through detailed fantasies. But what truly set BTK apart was his need for recognition. He sent letters to newspapers and police, providing details only the killer could know. He mocked investigators, criticized media coverage, and demanded attention. Despite this, he remained invisible. Throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, law enforcement pursued countless leads. They interviewed suspects, built profiles, and consulted behavioral experts. BTK was believed to be organized, intelligent, and familiar with police procedures. But no matter how many theories emerged, Dennis Rader never appeared on any serious suspect list. He didn't fit the stereotype people expected. He didn't live on the margins. He wasn't isolated or obviously disturbed in public. He was, in many ways, the opposite. By 1991, the killings stopped. For years, there was silence. Many believed BTK was dead or imprisoned for another crime. Others feared he might return at any moment. Wichita learned to live with an unanswered question hanging over it. Had the killer simply disappeared, or was he still out there, watching? The truth was even more unsettling. Dennis Rader had not stopped fantasizing. He had simply stopped killing. He later admitted that family responsibilities, aging, and fear of being caught contributed to his pause. But the urge never left. And in the early 2000s, something changed. Rader decided he wanted attention again. In 2004, nearly 3 decades after his first murder, BTK resurfaced. Letters began appearing once more, sent to local media outlets. The killer seemed older, more impatient, but still desperate to be acknowledged. Law enforcement reopened the case with renewed urgency, determined not to let the opportunity slip away again. This time, technology made the difference. In one of his communications, Rader asked police a seemingly innocent question. Could a floppy disk be traced? He was assured through a newspaper response that it could not. That reassurance proved fatal to his freedom. When he sent a floppy disk containing a document to authorities, investigators were able to extract metadata from the file. It revealed that the disk had been used on a computer at Christ Lutheran Church, and that the author name was Dennis. From there, the walls closed in quickly. Police obtained DNA from Rader's daughter through a medical sample, which was legally accessible, and matched it to DNA found at crime scenes. The match was undeniable. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was arrested while driving to work. The man who had terrorized Wichita for decades was taken into custody without incident. The reaction was disbelief. Neighbors were stunned. Church members were devastated. Co-workers couldn't reconcile the image of the rigid but ordinary man they knew with the reality of a serial killer. His wife and children had no idea. By all credible accounts, they were completely unaware of his crimes. Rader had compartmentalized his life with chilling precision, keeping his violent fantasies separate from his family and public persona. During his court appearances, Dennis Rader did something unusual. He confessed. In painstaking detail, he described each murder, often in a flat, emotionless tone. There was no visible remorse, only a disturbing sense of pride in his planning and execution. In 2005, he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison, ensuring he would never be released. The question that continues to haunt people is not just how he did it, but how he got away with it for so long. Part of the answer lies in trust. Rader understood how people think. He knew that authority figures, church leaders, and family men are often given the benefit of the doubt. He exploited social expectations, hiding in plain sight. When people imagine a killer, they often imagine someone who looks dangerous, someone visibly unstable. Dennis Rader knew that the safest disguise was normalcy. Another part of the answer lies in how communities function. People rely on patterns to feel safe. When someone consistently shows up, follows rules, and fulfills social roles, suspicion fades. Rader didn't just avoid detection. He actively reinforced the image people had of him. He volunteered, participated, and inserted himself into institutions built on trust. This case forced a painful reckoning in Wichita and beyond. It challenged the idea that evil is always obvious. It exposed how easily appearances can deceive and how dangerous it can be to assume that people like that couldn't possibly be capable of horrific acts. Even today, criminologists study the BTK case to understand how offenders compartmentalize their lives, how they manipulate perception, and how law enforcement can adapt to these realities. It remains one of the clearest examples of a predator who thrived not despite trust, but because of it. Dennis Rader is now incarcerated at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars, removed from the community he once blended into so seamlessly. But the legacy of his crimes lingers, not just in the families he destroyed, but in the collective awareness he forced upon an entire society. The most unsettling lesson of all may be this: sometimes the person everyone trusts the most is the one no one ever thinks to question. And that realization is far more frightening than any shadowy stranger. If this story made you think, challenged your assumptions, or kept you watching until the very end, make sure to support the channel by liking this video and subscribing. Stories like this matter because they remind us to look deeper, ask better questions, and stay aware of the world around us. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next, and stay connected as we continue uncovering the true stories that hide behind familiar faces.